What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron. We just wrapped up week 11 of the fantasy football season. So today we're going to break down some waiver wire targets. Now with these videos, I usually break them up into running backs, and then I do wide receivers, kind of like the tight ends, quarterbacks, just a nice little, hodgepodge of pass catchers and quarterbacks. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, it's a cold, cold world in those waiver wire streets. So we're going to combine them all into one video because there's really not two videos worth to talk about. Now, these players will be 50% owned or under on ESPN leagues, except for one special player. And then also, if you want to see my waiver wire article, I break down all of these players. I do like 10 players deep per every position, how much fab I'm bidding on them, because every week I'm doing in-depth waivers on FFPC leagues where it's like a 20-round draft, and you're out there submitting claims for Derek Gore and just like bottom of the barrel guys. So we go deep on there. Also give the guys for the normal leagues as well. But with all that being said, patreon.com/Ron Stewart is where you can find that. Now without further ado, make sure you subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical.
So the first guy on this list is going to be the one that is not under 50% owned on ESPN, and it's AJ Dillon. He is 59.6% owned, and that's insane. Like, I wouldn't put him on this list if he was like 75% owned, 80% owned. But you're telling me in 40% of ESPN leagues, he is available. Now, of course, there's going to be some like leagues where it's just like, I don't know, like it's like an 8-person league, and it's just like, I don't know, like third graders made some random ESPN account. So there is a lot of that going on. But if he is in your waiver wire pool, every dollar in your fab balance needs to be gone. It needs to be put on AJ Dillon. AJ Dillon is going to be a pretty traditional league winner. Aaron Jones is out for the next 4 to 8 weeks. That means you get AJ Dillon into the playoffs. And man, AJ Dillon, I didn't love him coming out of school, but I've really come around on him because with these running backs, I like the size and the speed. And I think it got overstated how limited of a pass catcher he was at Boston College. The whole offense ran through him. There was no passing game, and if there was, he still had, I think, like 10, 11 catches at some point in his college career. He has it all, but man, like his size and speed it's not, Jonathan Taylor size and speed. It is otherworldly size and speed, because when you look at it, he is 6 foot, 247 pounds. He is the same weight as Derrick Henry, a guy that we look at as a behemoth, but he's 3 inches shorter. I believe that Derrick Henry is like 6'3", 6'4". AJ Dillon is 6 foot on the nose, 247 pounds, the same weight as Derrick Henry. So it's Derrick Henry, all that mass, shrinked in even a little bit more. He's so dense. He's that thick boy build, but I'm telling you, he is dense, and he's not only dense, but he runs the same 40 as Derrick Henry, like a 4.54. His size-adjusted speed is insane. So when you get that all alone in the Green Bay backfield, with Aaron Rodgers, and they're scoring a lot of points. I know they didn't do it this week against the Seahawks, but that's more of an outlier than it is, the expectation. But AJ Dillon is going to be a problem. He saw 21 carries this week. Even with a healthy Aaron Jones, he did leave at like the midpoint of the game, but 21 carries, man. They want to feed this guy. He had 66 yards, nothing too efficient, but nobody really got any offense going in that game anyways. He had 2 touchdowns. He had 2 catches for 62 yards through the air. He's not even a receiver like that, but if you just get him the ball in space, he is such a bowling ball, especially it's a boomer take, but I mean, in these winter months, we're getting into December and we're at the end of November. It's getting cold out there. I'm telling you guys, DBs aren't going to want to tackle this guy. You're going to see the AJ Dillon, break it off for like 45 yards. He is, there is no running back that you can compare him to besides Derrick Henry. He's like Brandon Jacobs, Derrick Henry, just these bowling ball guys, and he has the long speed. So I'm really excited for him. If he's on your waiver wire, every ounce of fab, 100% of your fab budget needs to be put on AJ Dillon. He is going to be a league winner in this back half of games, probably a top 12 running back rest of season for me. Then to piggyback on AJ Dillon, I want to talk about Patrick Taylor Jr. And this is, something a little bit, exclusive to the Ron Stewart channel. I doubt anyone else is talking about him, but Patrick Taylor Jr. owned in 0% of leagues, probably rightfully so. But he's the next running back up after AJ Dillon. I liked Kylan Hill coming out of school, but I believe he's on injury reserve. Patrick Taylor got 2 carries on Sunday. He is going to be that next running back after AJ Dillon. He'll be the change of pace guy. And you want to lock up these backfields where there's only 2 running backs. When there's only 2 running backs in the backfield, that means all you need is 1 injury, right? There's no ambiguity. There's no guessing. Patrick Taylor would be the next guy up if AJ Dillon goes down. So I like that upside. And he's not a great prospect, but Patrick Taylor is interesting in the idea that He had 1,300 yards from scrimmage and 18 touchdowns from scrimmage in a backfield shared at Memphis with Darrell Henderson, Tony Pollard, and Antonio Gibson. So when given the opportunity, the guy can play. He can at least be, in the mix as like a Dearness Johnson, Elijah Mitchell type guy if, God forbid, anything happened to A.J. Dillon. Our next ad is somebody else that I would probably splash, a good amount of fab on. I usually have guys that I call priority ads where I would put up, 15% or more of my fab budget on. RHAMONDRE Stevenson is in that range. He put up 20 carries, 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground, 4 catches for 14 through the air against a really good Cleveland Browns defense. And that's why I love RHAMONDRE Stevenson. He is extremely explosive. He's really good between the tackles. That's why you're seeing 5 yards per carry on 20 carries. He also had 4 receptions. Now, the receptions didn't do a whole lot, only 14 yards, but just being involved, 4 catches. It was a game where Mac Jones only had 19 completions. They were up that big on the game. So the fact that he was involved like that is great. He saw 69% of the running back rushes. He saw 20% of the target share. That is only the 4th time a running back has ever hit those marks under the Bill Belichick era, which is huge because we've had all of these pretty good running backs, like Dion Lewis. You've had guys, I want to say, going back to like Lawrence Maroney, guys like that, just guys that were pretty good in this offense. And on top of that, you're talking about a guy in Belichick that likes to, spread things out, run a committee. He rarely uses his running back that much. And I think it was just because it was working. RHAMONDRE Stevenson was being really efficient because remember, I know that Damian Harris is gone, but J.J. Taylor and Brandon Bolden are capable of at least taking, 50% of the touches. Giving, RHAMONDRE Stevenson 24 touches in that game, I think it speaks a lot. I think that RHAMONDRE Stevenson, we've been saying this. If you guys have been watching the zero running back videos in the offseason, if you've been watching just the channel in general, I've been pounding the table for RHAMONDRE Stevenson season. I liked him as a prospect coming out. He has it all. Pass pro, pass catching. He runs between the tackles well. He's just explosive. And I know Damian Harris is still on the team, and of course he's going to be coming back from injury very soon. But when we have a running back like RHAMONDRE Stevenson who is legitimately good, and we see what happens when Damian Harris goes down, I like RHAMONDRE Stevenson as a handcuff, and I also like him because he has a few outs. Damian Harris could stay out for another week or two, and then boom, we have RHAMONDRE Stevenson in there playing great. We could have RHAMONDRE Stevenson playing, lights out, and he wins the job over Damian Harris. Now, obviously, that's like, maybe like a 2 to 5% chance, but we're just talking about outs. And then also on top of that, he could just play so well that he plays into a fantasy relevant role, like when we had James White and Damian Harris. He could just play primarily, he could play all the pass catching snaps, and he can mix in, and then all of a sudden you are getting enough touches for a flex worthy player out of RHAMONDRE Stevenson. So I like him as a pickup this week. Next up, we have D'Onta Foreman, the Tennessee Titans running back guy out of Texas. We talked about him last week. He did tear his Achilles like his first year in the league, but he made some strides this week. He pretty much took over the backfield in Tennessee. Adrian Peterson hasn't looked great. Jeremy McNichols hasn't looked great. He went from 22.7% of the backfield rushes to 47.8%. So still not getting, the majority. He is, he has more than Adrian Peterson and McNichols, but he's still not seeing, like over 50%, to a spot where he can be an every week starter, but he's starting to gain on those Tennessee Titans running backs. Now, I think Jeremy McNichols will always have a receiving role on this team. The problem is, man, the Titans love Adrian Peterson. I was listening to it on the broadcast, but they were saying like, oh yeah, I know that he didn't have like a great yards per carry, but did you see, you see the spin move? Did you see him, really work to get in the end zone? They are really, really buying into the Adrian Peterson experience, which sucks. I think that, D'Onta Foreman could eventually overtake that. It sucks for D'Onta Foreman. I have Adrian Peterson in some places, but it sucks to not see D'Onta Foreman get unleashed. I got to feel for the guy when you're going this long into your career. And remember, he won the, what is it called? Like the Doak Walker Award, like the best running back in college. He won that over like Dalvin Cook. I saw that stat the other day. D'Onta Foreman, go check out his college highlights. Dude was a dog on Texas. He was like a 3rd round pick. But yeah, it sucks that his career has had to go this way, but he looked good yesterday. He had 78 total yards. And then you had Jeremy McNichols and Adrian Peterson only have 28 yards combined. So D'Onta Foreman is much more efficient than them. And I think it's only a matter of time until he earns more of a workload. But again, he doesn't really have the merit of the coaching staff to the point where they'd want to just give him the entire keys to the backfield, if that makes sense. I think that it will probably still be a timeshare, but you still grab him. You don't break the bank for D'Onta Foreman, but you go out there, you grab him, and you pretty much just hope that, he figures things out and gets himself into a role. You're essentially projecting here. Then we have Eno Benjamin, a guy that I liked coming out. I wasn't a huge fan of him coming out. He came out of Arizona State. He wasn't extremely fast, but a really good pass catcher. Kind of had he has like a similar build to like a Devin Singletary, to like a Clyde Edwards-Helaire, in that range where he's like kind of small, but he's got some east-west wiggle to him. But he saw 1/3 of the opportunities this week. He saw 7 opportunities to James Conner's 14, and he didn't do anything great. He wasn't super productive, but first, it was a weird game script. They got killed by the Panthers. Kyler Murray wasn't there. I'm not really taking many takeaways from that Cardinals game, but I think that he has the opportunity to get worked in like a bad version of Chase Edmonds, like maybe become like somewhere in the RB3, RB4 range if you need a spot start. And then also James Conner gets hurt all the time. Every time that he has gotten a big dog workload with the Steelers, not that first year, but like last year, the year before that, he ends up getting banged up. So there is always the chance that James Conner does get an injury. And then all of a sudden you're looking at Eno Benjamin as, a top 15 to 20 running back in that, Elijah Mitchell, Khalil Herbert, when David Montgomery went down. He is in that same exact mold because they have no one else behind him in that Cardinals backfield. So for that reason alone, when you have a high-scoring offense and a clear handcuff, that's valuable at this point in the season because we're just trying to hold on, get that lottery ticket. Our last running back here is Wayne Gallman. And I actually really liked him in the offseason. It didn't really work out because, Cordarrelle Patterson just became a god. He just decided to become, prime Adrian Peterson. But I do like Wayne Gallman. I think that he played pretty well when Saquon Barkley was out last year. He saw 15 carries yesterday, Wayne Gallman. Now, again, this is a part of, another weird game script where the Falcons got killed by the Cowboys. They were never in it. So the fact that Wayne Gallman got 15 carries doesn't mean that he's like the RB1 moving forward. That's not what I'm saying, but they got a good look at him. He went out there. Was he super efficient? Not really, but they leaned on him. They gave him a bunch of carries, and now we're at a point where that matters given the fact that Cordarrelle Patterson is on the injury report. I've been seeing it going around Twitter, on RotoWorld, all that stuff. He has a sprained ankle. Who knows if he's going to play this week? So Wayne Gallman would actually be a really interesting, spot start in the RB3 range if Patterson went down. Because I don't think that they're all the way bought in on Mike Davis, if I'm being honest. I don't mind Wayne Gallman as, a flyer ad if you have a spot on your bench. Moving on to the wide receivers, we do have two priority ads, two guys I would put over 15% of my budget on. The first one being Rashod Bateman. I love Rashod Bateman. We talk about him every single week. I feel like I've listed him on this show every single week, but I have to keep on putting him out there until he's above 50% owned on ESPN, as he should. He hasn't popped off yet, and I think that's kind of the reason. He hasn't had one of those big games yet, but rookies pop off later. We've been talking about this literally since August. It takes time for these rookie wide receivers to develop and become league winners. We see this every single year. We see guys start out a little bit slow, and then like week 10, week 11, week 12 comes around, and that's when they start to really pick things up. And that's what we saw last year with like Ayuk became a league winner on the back half of the season. Guys in their rookie year, they start to really come on during those playoff weeks. I could easily see Bateman being, a league winner of that kind of caliber. Now, this tweet is from Dalton Keene. I have a lot of respect for his work. And the guys on this list are all young wide receivers. So they're all rookie wide receivers, and they're all probably, age 21, 22 when they came out. And he is pacing through 4 games with Odell Beckham, Randy Moss, and Jamar Chase in terms of targets, receiving yards, reception. Now, I know this is a super small sample size with only 4 games. It just goes to show that in terms of volume, in terms of what we're expecting from him, he's right on track. Now, fantasy points and touchdowns aren't listed on there. That's because they vary so much, especially when you put them in a small sample, whereas targets, yards, receptions are a little bit more sticky in a small sample. It's just to show that Bateman is on pace to be good. Just be a little bit more patient. I like this passing offense. I like Bateman as a talent. I think the boom games will come. Then we have a guy in pretty much the same exact mold as Rashod Bateman, one of these rookie wide receivers we're trying to chase, get that league-winning upside. Elijah Moore is in that same conversation. Now, he hasn't seen the same volume, but he has been extremely efficient. He is the wide receiver 5 in fantasy points over the last 3 weeks, which is insane. He's now seen 6 or more targets with 3 different quarterbacks across all 3 of those games. He hasn't seen any stability at all, but he's still coming out there performing. Just wait till he gets some stability. Zach Wilson comes back. I'm telling you guys, this is a take that I've been standing firm on the Twitter streets. It's that Zach Wilson's going to come back. He's going to settle down. He's going to be fine. Am I saying he's going to be a world beater, Justin Herbert type guy? Probably not, but I think he's going to come back. He's going to take command of the offense. People forget that Titans game was really, really promising in the beginning of the season. They beat the Titans at home. He made some really good passes. And I think when we're looking at Zach Wilson and this Jets offense, it's really important to note that Matt LaFleur, the OC, he was on the sidelines with Zach Wilson. Then he goes up to the booth, right, to call these games, call the offense. And all of a sudden, he's getting backup quarterbacks like, what is his name, Josh Johnson, to go out there and like put up 3 touchdowns and a bunch of yards against the Colts, and he's making Mike White look great. I'm telling you, if he stays up in the booth, I don't know if he will. If he stays up in the booth when Zach Wilson comes back, I think we're going to see some stability. I think Zach Wilson's going to play well. I liked him coming out. So Elijah Moore, if he gets some stability, and if the Jets coaches can stop rotating these wide receivers, man, they take Elijah Moore out for guys like Braxton Berrios and Keelan Cole and Denzel Mims, and it's such nonsense. If they just let him stay on the field. Now, I will say, that's the thing with these rookies. The volume progressively gets more and more as the season goes on. So if he keeps making plays, the volume will go up. We call that the Cordell Patterson corollary, right? Remember, he had like a 30% snap share, and then he kept balling out, and then eventually he's 60, 70, 75% snap share. I think that's what will happen for Elijah Moore. Just keep an eye on the snap rate, keep an eye on his targets, all that good stuff. Then a flyer at wide receiver I don't feel great about, but I just wanted to list him on here, is Gabriel Davis. He's been he's always been super efficient. He was a fun prospect coming out of UCF, a nice, analytical darling. He just didn't get the draft capital, and he is really efficient because this is a really strong offense, and he's, a big play receiver. He had 3 catches for 105 yards, but the problem is he only has a 5.7% target share on the season. The problem is that he's really efficient when he does get the volume. He just doesn't get the volume very often. If you grab Gabriel Davis, you're putting him in your flex and you're praying, man. He's like a wide receiver 5 week to week for me, but I think that he is one of those few, like a Michael Gallup, like a Tim Patrick. There's a couple of these wide receivers in the league that are like handcuffs, where if the starter went down, then they'd be great. So I do think that he fits in that category, where if Beasley or, Sanders goes down, he could, elevate into a top 36 wide receiver. But again, he's just somebody, if I have a spot and I'm really thin at wide receiver, or if it's like an FFPC league where it's like a 20-team bench and you have like 12 spots on your bench, then fine. Gabriel Davis isn't a bad ad at all. Moving on to tight ends, we're going to talk about Dan Arnold. And let me tell you guys something. If Dan Arnold is on waivers in your league, you're not in a competitive enough league. It's wild to me how he's available in 28% of leagues right now. This guy, Dan Arnold, I don't understand why. I didn't like him as a prospect. I didn't think he was great on the Cardinals last year. I didn't think he was great on the Panthers, but Urban Meyer likes him a nice tight end, man. He likes himself a nice tight end. He was peppering targets to James O'Shaughnessy. He recruited Tim Tebow to come play tight end. The guy has 7.6 targets per game. When we're talking about tight ends, that's crazy. And 7.6 targets per game is the 5 games since he's been a Jaguar. And in that stretch, he's the tight end 5 in points per game. He's a tight end 5 for points per game in the last 5 weeks. He cannot be on waivers. So if he's on waivers, please go grab him. I don't care if you have Darren Waller or Travis Kelce. Go grab him. And if he's going to keep on balling out, then flip Travis Kelce or Waller and keep Darren Arnold in your tight end spot. At our second tight end spot, we talked about him last week. We're going to keep talking about him until he's owned in enough leagues. But Logan Thomas, he's going to be back soon. Taylor Heineke actually looked pretty good yesterday. They beat the Buccaneers. And he has a really juicy playoff schedule. That's pretty much what you're hoping for, is that he gets healthy, that he gets back to his normal self by the playoffs, because his playoff schedule is crazy. He plays the Eagles twice, who I believe are giving up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. He is playing the Dallas Cowboys once, and they're giving up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends the last time I checked. It hasn't been updated since, this week happened, because, you need a couple of weeks for that to kick in. But really juicy playoff schedule. He is one of those guys that, helps you go toe-to-toe with somebody else that has a Travis Kelce. You can match their tight end production from a guy that you got off waivers. Then I wanted to slip this last guy in. I want to talk about Cam Newton. And he's not the starter yet on the Panthers, but he looks really good. He had 2 touchdowns. He was super efficient. He threw touchdowns. He scored 1. And I can't imagine he isn't the starter sooner rather than later. I don't think that PJ Walker is, the answer. I don't think that Sam Darnold is the answer. If Cam Newton comes in, he plays like he did yesterday. They teach him a little bit of the playbook. I don't see why he doesn't come in. And then eventually, if he starts, this week, next week, he has, top 5 upside, just given his touchdown upside that, we saw already that they're scheming him touches on the goal line. They're calling Cam Newton plays, and he's only been in the building for like 5 days. They're calling Cam Newton plays on the goal line. So if that happens and he is now the full starter, he's throwing the ball, he's playing a full game, he is already a top 12 quarterback at that point. Now that's going to do it for us today, fellas. I'm actually about to click off of this and go live in a second. So this is going to be a weird inception, because this is going to be out Tuesday. I'm going to be going live Monday night, because story time, I did some stupid shit in the morning, but I'll talk about that on the live stream. I'm going to go do that. Enjoy the Monday Night Football game. I love you guys. Make sure if you want to see the entire waiver wire article, I'm going to be working on that Tuesday, around, 4 or 5 p.m. I'll have that out for you guys. That'll have my entire waiver wire rankings, how much fab I put on all those guys. So if you're out there trying to dominate your leagues, check that out, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yep. Juice, 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 juice. Yep. 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 Yep.